According to Shannon Watt's Facebook page, her and her husband Chris looked like the picture-perfect couple. They were living your typical suburban lifestyle with 2 little kids and a third on the way. But when Chris started getting frisky with one of his coworkers, his marriage with Shannon deteriorated. One thing led to another, and the next thing we know, Shannon and her 2 daughters are missing. Let's find out how it all went down. Chris and Shannon Watts met on Facebook in 2010. They dated for 2 years before getting married and moving to Colorado. In 2013, they had their first kid, Bella. 2 years later, they had a second daughter, Celeste. Chris and Shannon absolutely adored their daughters. Or at least Shannon did. That same year, the couple filed for bankruptcy. Yikes. Neither of them made much money from their jobs and had a bunch of credit card debt, medical bills, and student loans. At the time, Chris was working for a petroleum company, and Shannon had just left her job at a children's hospital to work from home for a multi-level marketing supplement company. So bills were piling up, and Chris and Shannon couldn't keep up, which could definitely be a source of tension between them. But as Shannon continued to work for the supplement company, she made her way up in the rankings and even scored a brand new Lexus for making so many sales. Her and Chris also scored a lot of vacations through her job. Due to the structure of the company she worked for, Shannon was super active on Facebook. She had a page for her business where she posted a lot about the products she sold and hosted live videos pretty frequently, which Chris sometimes made appearances in. Shannon was also very open about her personal life on Facebook. In June 2018, Shannon found out she was pregnant. She wanted to do one of those cute pregnancy reveal videos with her husband, so she put on a t-shirt that said, "Oops, we did it again," held up a pregnancy test, and recorded Chris's reaction on Facebook Live when he walked in the room. His reaction was pretty awkward, but most people just assumed it was because he was a shy and introverted person in general. But in the video, Chris did still seem excited, and even said, "That's awesome." But people don't always mean what they say. And for Chris, his later actions seemed to contradict his initial statement. Like, you know when your aunt asks how her food was, and you lie to make her think it was good? So, based on Shannon's Facebook wall, you'd think her and Chris have the perfect family. And according to peers, they really did. Chris was described as a loving, dedicated dad and a wonderful husband to Shannon. But things started to get rocky for the couple when Chris began seeing his coworker, Nicole. He told Nicole that he was getting a divorce from Shannon, which Shannon had no idea about. So Chris either wanted to split up with Shannon and hadn't told her yet, or he was just saying that to get in Nicole's pants. Or a little bit of both. Chris and his mistress first started talking that June, and while they were hitting it off, Shannon was making gushy Facebook posts about how much she loved her husband. On Father's Day, she wrote, "Chris, we are so incredibly blessed to have you. You do so much every day for us and take such great care of us. You are the reason I was brave enough to agree to number 3. A few days after that, she posted an ultrasound picture and said, "Chris is the best dad us girls could ask for." Near the end of June, Shannon left for a 6-week trip to North Carolina with her 2 daughters. She called it a vacation, but it was more of an extended visit with her family. Some people believe Shannon went on this trip because they speculated her and Chris were having marital problems. But 6 weeks is a long time to be away, and Chris took advantage of all that free time to foster his new relationship with Nicole. On July 4th, Nicole went over to Chris's house for the first time. She apparently went there to cook lunch and help Chris set diet and weight loss goals. But I have a feeling there's more to that story. You don't just go over to a married man's house alone without telling his wife and help him with his diet. July 7th was the first reported phone call between Chris and Nicole. It was made at midnight and only lasted 2 minutes. Okay, so that definitely wasn't for work. And what did they talk about for just 2 minutes? That seems a bit sketch. Well, around that same time, Shannon was getting ghosted by Chris. Like, he barely responded to his texts, which is weird because you'd think he would at least check in with his wife to see how their kids are doing. But no, he barely touched base with them at all. And it got so bad that Shannon texted Chris to ask if he was okay because he wasn't really talking to her. He replied, "I'm fine, baby. The last few days at work have put a lot of responsibility on me with new people. I didn't mean to seem short, boo. I love you to the moon and back." Okay, so he's trying to be sly here because technically he did work with Nicole. So in some twisted way, he was with a new person from work, but it definitely wasn't on the clock. On July 14th, Chris and Nicole went on a date to a car museum. During their date, Shannon called Chris 4 times, and he declined them all. What if it was an emergency? 4 phone calls is a lot to just brush off like that. And of all the places you could pick for a date, you go to a car museum? Interesting choice. I mean, I did have a date in a car once. We went to get ice cream, but I was the only one who ate the ice cream, and he made me eat it outside in the cold because he didn't want me to eat in his car. So after his car museum date, Chris talked to Shannon on the phone and told her he wanted a divorce. He also said he didn't want to have the baby. And he drops all of this on Shannon over the phone? This guy is bold. Dang. Shannon wasn't ready to give up just like that, so she suggested marriage counseling. But Chris wasn't about it. Meanwhile, Chris and Nicole had started to send each other risque photos. And get this, Chris would keep the pictures of Nicole in a secret calculator app on his phone. OMG, this guy just keeps getting worse. There were also a bunch of weird internet searches on Chris and Nicole's computers around this time. Nicole once searched, "Man I'm having an affair with says he will leave his wife." Chris searched, "When to say I love you in a new relationship," and "How does it feel when someone says I love you?" Whoa. Let me just break this down for a minute. So based on Nicole's search, she clearly knows that Chris hadn't cut ties with Shannon. And she was okay enough with it to keep seeing him? That's terrible. And based on Chris's search, he apparently has no idea how love works, even though he's been married for 6 years. Get it together, dude. At the end of July, Chris finally decided to go visit Shannon and the kids in North Carolina. But first, he left a love note behind for Nicole. Of course he did. During Chris's visit, he barely interacted with Shannon. She confided in some of her friends about the situation, where she told them Chris was acting totally different and seemed completely uninterested in her. Chris continued to refuse counseling anytime Shannon brought it up, and he wouldn't stop talking about how bad he didn't want the new baby. When they got back to Colorado, things between Chris and Shannon were just as bad, if not worse. Chris was so rude to Shannon about the whole baby thing that she ended up canceling the gender reveal party, which, based on her Facebook reputation, that's a pretty big deal. On August 9th, Shannon went to Arizona on a work trip. That same day, she wrote a long letter to Chris about her feelings. Basically, it was her last try to save the marriage. At 2 a.m. on August 13th, Shannon came home from her work trip. She was dropped off by her friend and co-worker, Nicole. And this is a different Nicole than the one Chris was seeing, which is just a weird coincidence. Later that day, Shannon wasn't responding to any of her friends' texts. And she even missed her OBGYN appointment as well as a work meeting. Nicole, who was probably super panicked, decided to go to Shannon's house. This was around noon. She knocked on the door and rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Chris was at work at the time, but Nicole got in touch with him to ask about Shannon. He told her not to worry and claimed that Shannon took the kids on a play date. But Nicole saw the Lexus in the garage with both car seats still in the car, so she knew Chris wasn't telling the truth. Later that afternoon, Nicole called the police and got them to come out for a welfare check. Chris left work to meet the officers and let them in to search the house. And he was totally nonchalant about the whole thing. Okay, I'm a bit confused by this. Like, what does Chris think is going on? If Shannon really took the kids on a play date, he would have just called her and told her to come home. So something is clearly up, but Chris isn't even pretending to act worried. And how was he going to explain the fact that the car was still there? This is sketchy written all over it. The police looked through Chris and Shannon's house and didn't really find much. Shannon and the kids weren't there, but at the time, Chris was still sticking with the whole playdate claim. There were no signs of foul play, and everything in the house seemed normal, except a few things. First, Shannon's cell phone was found in between couch cushions. She wouldn't just leave her phone like that if she went on a play date. And the fact that it was wedged in the couch seems even more suspicious. The second weird thing was that the sheets were missing from Chris and Shannon's bed, as well as their daughter's beds. Okay, so it's either laundry day or someone is trying to cover something up. Chris told the police that when Shannon got home, they fought about their marriage and went to bed. Yeah, that's not toxic at all. That morning, he woke up at 5 and left for work, which is the last time he said he saw his wife and kids. But in video footage captured from a neighbor's surveillance camera, something weird went on that morning. Chris was seen pulling his work truck up to the garage at 5:30 a.m. And he almost always kept his truck parked on the street, so something fishy is definitely going on here. In the clips, Chris is seen going back and forth 3 times, loading things into his truck. It's hard to tell in the footage, but it looks like Chris is carrying bags or something. 3 of his family members are missing, and he took 3 trips to his truck with mysterious cargo? That's not suspicious at all. Oh, and that morning, Chris apparently called his daughter's school and told them his kids won't be attending the school anymore. And he didn't specify if he just meant that day or for good, but his girls weren't sick, so he was definitely up to something. That afternoon, a local news reporter came by and interviewed Chris on TV. He said he had no idea where his family was at and just wanted them to come home. But the most disturbing part about all of this is Chris didn't really seem distraught at all. He was almost smiling during the interview and didn't cry at all. If my family were missing, I'd be a wreck. And I think anyone else who truly loved their family would be the same way. That next day, police reported Shannon and her 2 daughters as missing. Investigators started searching through Chris's phone records to see if they could find anything, and that's when they found out about his mistress. Chris was brought in for another interview. He failed a lie detector test and later admitted to strangling Shannon and burying her at the oil site where he worked. Later that day, investigators went to the oil site and discovered all 3 bodies. Shannon was buried in a shallow grave, and the 2 daughters were dumped in oil tanks. So according to Chris, when he and Shannon were arguing about their marriage, he brought up the topic of divorce. This apparently pissed off Shannon so bad that she ended up smothering their daughters until they fell limp. Chris said he reacted in the heat of the moment and put his hands around Shannon's neck until she took her last breath. After that, he dumped them at work. But 2 months later, Chris fessed up and said he was responsible for all 3 slayings. In late August of 2018, Chris was charged with 5 counts of manslaughter. 2 extra counts were tacked on because his daughters were both under the age of 12. Additionally, Chris was hit with 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body and 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy. In November, Chris was found guilty on all accounts and was sentenced to 5 life sentences, 3 consecutive and 2 concurrent. He also got 84 extra years for the other crimes and was given no chance of parole. Shannon's family requested for Chris to not receive an execution sentence because they didn't want any further slayings to take place. Wow, what a show of character. Shannon's family definitely took the high road with that one. A few months into his sentence, Chris finally told officials what exactly happened that morning in a 5-hour interview in prison. He said he got in a fight with Shannon that morning about wanting to split up. One thing led to another, and he ended up strangling her. When he was trying to drag her body downstairs, his daughters woke up and asked him what was going on. Chris panicked, loaded his wife in the truck, and took his daughters with him. He then drove to the oil site where he smothered his daughters one at a time with a blanket, dumped them in the oil tank, and buried Shannon in a shallow grave. And then I guess he started his shift like normal? That is insane to me. And some point along the way, he must have tossed out their sheets too. Well, Chris is still serving his time in jail, and he will be for a very long time. But something crazy happened in the fall of 2020. So, a Netflix documentary came out about the incident, and a bunch of women who saw the documentary started writing letters to Chris. They apparently found Chris very attractive and said they felt compassion for him. Chris got the letters and started writing some of them back. So he literally has a bunch of lady fan pen pals to keep him busy in jail. This man blows my mind, in the worst way ever. First, he cheats on his wife and keeps his mistress's explicit pictures in a fake calculator app. Then he snuffs his wife and kids because he's pissed he can't just get a divorce in 2 seconds. And now he's writing letters to fans in jail? And can we talk about him and his not-so-secret ladies' search history? It looks like both of them could have used a friend or therapist or something. But I guess when you're committing adultery and life-ending crimes, you have to resort to Google as your bestie. I hope Shannon's family is able to find the support and comfort they need from those around them. And food. Food always brings me a little comfort. Like these apple cinnamon egg rolls. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hope to see you next time.